Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers review. A bit of a breaking news video. This one, some changes in the boardroom. Rangers have confirmed that Managing Director Stewart Robertson is to depart the club this summer, with the chairman and the board said to be delighted to appoint James Bisgrove as the club's new chief executive officer. I'll give you a rundown of the club statement. Stewart says Stewart Robertson will depart Rangers on July 31st, 2023, having decided to explore new opportunities. Stewart leaves with the best wishes and gratitude of the chairman and board for all he achieved in his time at Ibrox. James Bisgrove will transition from his current Director of Commercial and Marketing role, becoming Rangers CEO from July 31st, 2023. Stewart Robertson has overseen a transformative period in the club's history, in which he has helped to rebuild every facet of the club. Stewart departs his 8-year tenure, having returned the club to profitability and delivered the historic 55th league title and several strong European campaigns, which culminated in the 2022 Europa League final in Seville and the return to Champions League football. Stewart's legacy will be wide-ranging, including the club's new museum and Edmundston House. Now, Chairman John Bennett commented in thanking Stewart for his tireless work and commitment to the club over the past 8 years. The board and I wish him every success in his new project. We look forward to welcoming him back to Ibrox as a supporter of his boyhood club. The board is delighted to appoint James as the new CEO of Rangers, having transformed the club's commercial operations. James has demonstrated outstanding credentials in the key areas of commercial delivery, talent development and leadership. He is ideally positioned to drive the step change in energy and restructuring that is now underway. Now, Stewart Robertson commented, he says, as a lifelong supporter of Rangers, it's been a privilege to hold this post for the past 8 years. I'm very proud of what the supporters, the board, the investors, the players, the management teams and our loyal staff, all working together, have achieved in that period. I would like to thank everyone for their incredible support, without which it wouldn't have been possible. I wish John, James and everyone connected with the club the greatest of success in the future. And new CEO James Bisgrove added, I would like to thank and congratulate Stewart for all he has achieved at Rangers. His daily support and wisdom have been invaluable. Rangers Football Club is a globally renowned institution steeped in success, and the scale of privilege and responsibility I feel to serve its supporters as CEO is immense. He added that in the past 4 years, I've witnessed firsthand what this great club means to our supporters worldwide, and together with our chairman John Bennett and the board, we will work tirelessly to achieve the success.
Easy for you to say, Derek.
Yeah, I'm all over the place here. To achieve the success Rangers supporters deserve. My immediate priority is to ensure Michael Beale and his staff continue to have the resources and environment they require to put a winning team on the pitch and to deliver regular trophies for our supporters. This will be underpinned by overseeing the continuation of our positive financial performance and sustained profitability off the pitch. I'm personally looking forward to energising our engagement with all Rangers supporters and overseeing a strengthened and aligned culture. Big news there, Johnny. What's your reaction to that?
Well, what I would say is, first of all, I think Stewart Robertson, who's been in place since 2015, took over the club when they were at a really low ebb in the Championship, and departs having seen the 55th title delivered, the club into profit, the player trading model working, and obviously having seen a European final being reached. So I think there's a lot of significant successes of Stewart's reign, even though I think it's obvious that the last couple of years there has been domestic problems in the team and domestic missteps that have allowed Celtic to come back when it looked like after 55 Rangers were going to go through a period of dominance. And you can see that there's a number of fans who have been unhappy with the management team. And what you have to say is, well, that's the team, that's the club gone through an enormous shakeup. We've seen Douglas Park depart, we've seen Ross Wilson depart, and now we're going to see Stewart Robertson depart. And if you look at the way that the club have replaced those people, what it has brought is both reform and continuity, Derek, because you've got Stewart Robertson obviously going out the door. He's been replaced by a much younger man, 38 years old, James Bisgrove, a guy who is very much of the digital generation. I think who understands and gets the kind of modern social media world and the importance of that. He's had a lot of experience in other industries around football. So, for example, he's worked for UEFA, worked for Team, who are absolutely huge when it comes to negotiating TV rights for Champions League and huge sporting events. And he's also obviously got a good business background, having worked for Emirates as well. So James Bisgrove is a serious operator, Derek, in terms of the business world. And he's had 4 years as part of the commercial team. You might wonder, is he getting to the point where he's kind of done what he could have done, which is, I think he said that when he took over that Rangers were going to go and hit 10 million commercial revenue. Then he said 27, then he said 30. He's brought it right up during his tenure. And I think everyone has a shelf life. And for many of us, 4 years in the one job, you're getting to a stage where it should almost be job done. And how do we take this forward or move on to something else? And he's obviously been given this opportunity, and what an opportunity it is. Really a chance to move into being a CEO of one of Europe's biggest football clubs. I don't think you could turn that down. While it is going to be very financially rewarding for James Bisgrove, there's also going to be a lot of scrutiny and a lot of stress that comes with that role. You can better believe it. And it's going to be on a different scale to anything he's encountered before. But what I would say is this, Derek. I think in James Bisgrove, Rangers have appointed someone who really understands and gets fan engagement, and I think who will bring in a much more orientated towards direct communication approach. This is not to criticise Stewart or what Stewart's done. I think there's a lot of successes behind the work that he's done. Yeah. But you're talking about a younger man with fresh ideas who wants to do things in a different way. And I think that'll be quite stark from quite early on in his tenure. Stewart will obviously take it on to, is it the 31st of July, they say in the statement? Yeah. So he's obviously goes beyond to the end of the season. Hopefully Rangers season will go obviously to June 3rd. Yeah, and then Stewart will carry on until the end of July. Yeah. And then James comes in. You have an opportunity to pick Stewart's brains, and although he's been working closely with him, develop the plans going forward. But I think we can say that James Bisgrove will not be a quiet, in the background CEO. I think he'll be someone who isn't shy to come out, who isn't shy to talk about successes and failures. And I think we're going to see a new broom approach. But, and this is the key thing, these are now three guys in charge of the club: Michael Beale, John Bennett, and James Bisgrove, with fresh ideas, wanting to go in a fresh direction, but also who understand what it's all about. They've been there. They've all been part of the last few years. They're there or thereabouts in that, in those that success, that failure as well. And I think they will offer a level of continuity that will allow the club not to have a sort of a turbulent period. But at the same time, you're talking about guys who can come in and also say, well, listen, we've seen the way it's been done up till now, and we want to try something different. So I'm really positive about it. I think 8 years is a long time for a managing director to be in place, Derek. That's a heavy load to carry for a long time.
Yeah, I totally agree. Interesting points you make there, Johnny, and lots of comments coming in. Let's get to a few of them. Some not universal. Some have concerns. Xander raises an interesting point I wanted to put to you. It says CEO and not managing director. Interesting. Should we look a bit into that? Obviously, it's a different role, I guess, that James Bisgrove will be performing.
Yeah, I don't really think so, mate. I just think it's perhaps the managing director role was kind of traditional to Rangers. That's how they've done it in the past. And as the CEO, that's what most clubs up and down the UK have as their structure. So I think it's as simple as that. I don't think there's anything to read into that. I just think it's about it's basically modernity and how clubs are set up.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting point raised here by Alan. He says James Bisgrove has done well at his job of making us money and has always spoke well during interviews. However, there's other comments. Alex Kelly says Bisgrove wanted to play in the Ange Fest in Sydney. He also introduced my Jers to the support, 2 own goals with our support, he says. And Teddy Bears backs up. He says everyone is entitled to one mistake. His was Australia. Time to move on. And Freddie Faulkner with a point here. He says that's the 3 gone now. Park, Wilson and Robertson. So will we see a different direction? Maybe we will see. That is interesting, isn't it, Johnny? I think once supporters start bringing banners to grounds with your face on it, wanting you out the club, I think that's the beginning of the end. We've seen it. Ross Wilson, of course, departed recently to go to Nottingham Forest. Stewart Robertson, of course, was now set to leave in July. But like you say, as a new chairman, we've got a relatively new manager, a young coach as well in charge at the moment. And it's going to be a young CEO. 38 is pretty young, but by all accounts. So this is be interesting to see what direction Rangers go in. But I think what is key is communication with the supporters. That has been one criticism levelled at the board, hasn't it? Is that a lack of communication. So it'll be interesting. I think that's the one thing the supporters will be wanting to see.
So if you look back to the era when I was growing up and following Rangers under David Murray, there was always a visible leader at the forefront of the club who was prepared to come out and show the direction of the club and address tumult. So whenever there was a bump in the road or things going wrong, David Murray would come out. Now, David Murray, we all know, had a lot of flaws. And I'm not holding him up as a bastion of perfection or anything like that. But I'm talking about, front and centre leadership. And I think many of us of a certain age are kind of used to that the Rangers chairmanship, it's like it's a big position in Scottish society. It's a highly thought of and highly aspirational place to be fundamentally, and what you expect from that is vision and an understanding of driving forward a Scottish institution. So that's what we had previously in that role, but I don't think it necessarily has to come from that role, Derek. It might come from the CEO. We know that the chairman of Rangers now, John Bennett, has a lot of business irons in the fire and a very demanding day job. So it might well be that leadership comes from the CEO, and that's fine, but it needs to come from somewhere. I think Steven Gerrard, I was saying this to someone earlier today, Steven Gerrard was such an all-encompassing, visible leadership figure at the club that he kind of solved a lot of those issues because a world figure in terms of football at the helm, and the manager then has a level of kind of respect and quality of delivery in terms of the message that allows the club to kind of function with just kind of one figurehead. And maybe Steven Gerrard, being the kind of personality he is, would be quite happy with that being the case. But I think Michael Beale, he's a different kettle of fish. 42, he's in his first year in management. He's been a coach for a long time, and there's no doubt Michael Beale is not going to be the finished article in year one of management. He will get better as time goes on. So I think he needs that level of support where he's got someone showing a bit of leadership behind the scenes. And to be honest, I think even with what I've just said about Gerrard, I think Gerrard would have benefited from that as well. But the club have chosen to manage it in a certain way up till now. And it'll be interesting to see how different it looks going forward. But I'd fully expect to see more engagement, more communication. I think both through the club's media channels and I think through the various media platforms that cover the club. I think you've seen over the last year the club have opened up a lot, and I think they've got a strategy that will see them coming out more and talking about the things that are going on and being a little bit more upfront with the various things that are going on. And listen, we can only applaud that, and that's what the fans have been asking for.
Yeah.
So I'd fully expect there to be obviously a big sit down. I think right now, looking at what's ahead, you've got a fairly big game at the weekend, so I don't think that's going to come ahead of that. I think the club will want to very much, Derek, have the focus retained on this massive game. But I think in the aftermath of the game, you'll see John Bennett and James Bisgrove come out and talk to the fans and outline their vision for the club. But perhaps that'll happen after the Celtic game, because I think that has to come first, and you don't want a lot of noise getting in the way of preparations for that one.
Yeah,
yeah. It just makes more sense in that regard for them to do it afterwards, I would say.
Yeah, let's get to a few of the comments that are coming in. Shona says, fan engagement will be massive with James Bisgrove. He understands the new generation. But an interesting interview we did with him a few months ago, in fact, just on an update.
Yeah, you sat down with him, Derek, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Time with him.
Yeah, he was very good, to be fair. Gave us an idea of the commercial year that Rangers had. So yeah, it was an engaging chat. But like you, Johnny, he's going to come up under a lot more scrutiny now. It's a bigger role, of course, and that leads us on. Hugh says, who will take Bisgrove's job? I'd imagine that Rangers will be looking to sound out the best possible candidates to take over. And also there's a number of vacancies, of course. Caroline says, do you have a new vice chairman yet? And John Adams says, what's happening with the sporting director now? Are they looking for one? They will be.
I can answer that, yeah. That's going to be a decision that's going to be made at the end of the season. I would fully expect Rangers to appoint someone. But the question is, what is the role? Is it a sporting director, as Ross Wilson was? Or is that a position that's realigned a little bit to focus on certain things like the integration of the women's team, overseeing the youth academy? It will be interesting to see how they manage that. But I would be shocked if there wasn't someone there who was the spider in the web, if you want. I always use that analogy, who is overseeing all these different departments. There needs to be someone that's a line manager. It can't be Michael Beale. He can't be going and managing Malky Thompson, for example. That's just ridiculous. Yeah. There needs to be someone that's overseeing those elements: the recruitment team, the women's team, the youth team, etc., the analysts. There's got to be someone.
Yeah. And I like this suggestion from Barry. He says, Broxy for Bisgrove's old job. I'm not entirely sure he's qualified for that, to be honest, but it's a good suggestion, Barry. Caroline, just with a point, I think you sort of answered it there, Johnny. She says, I thought John Bennett would have seen his vision for the club, but he hasn't addressed the fans. I'm sure that will happen after Sunday. You don't want to be taken away from the game.
Yeah, I think reading between the lines, Derek, I think you'd have to say that clearly there's been some major goings on at the club. And I think that you would have to say that John Bennett, having come out, knowing what we know now, it would have looked a bit odd if he'd come out and given a State of the Union address, maybe a half an hour or 40 minutes or something like that on Rangers TV, and then this announcement is made. I think it's better now that he's started to put together his team to take Rangers forward. His guy is in, and he can sit down with everyone and outline exactly what he wants to do for the future. It's a bit silly to have to do that twice. So I think that now makes a bit more sense that John Bennett hasn't spoken to the Rangers fans already.
Yeah. And Barry says Beale's presser will be about an hour long this weekend. Yeah, I could imagine. We will be there, folks. I think it's Friday it's scheduled for ahead of that game on Sunday. Interesting point here from Alex Kelly. He says, are you guys confident these changes will find us being best in class in Scotland? A rookie manager, a rookie CEO, a rebuild required for the first team, a lot of instability at our club. Does he have a point there, Johnny? I think it is, of course, like you just touched on it. We've got a manager in place. He's in his first full season as a manager, as the main man. James Bisgrove, of course, stepping up. We touched on he's 38 years old. He has done a sterling job in the main as the commercial director, but now he's going to be CEO. Can you understand Alex's point here? Is supporters right to be concerned, you reckon?
No, because I think while there is inexperience in the specific roles, these are guys that have been in and around the club and know exactly what it's about for a long time. And I'm writing a piece just now about it, and the words that I use is they've had their feet licked by flames already. Somebody's already mentioned Sydney. I think James Bisgrove will look back on that and say that that's something that he's learned a lot from. Ultimately, he was doing his job, by the way, which was generating revenue for Rangers. But James Bisgrove doesn't come from a background where he's a Rangers diehard, Derek, where he grew up with the club in his DNA. So he's got to learn on the job too, and I think it's important that you learn from your mistakes in life. If you don't make mistakes, then I think you don't get better, you don't improve. So I think that'll be a huge learning point, and the fact that he's gone through that will help him because that really was a bit of a crisis. It really was a proper Barney created on social media, wasn't it? And one thing I would say about James Bisgrove on that front, and by the way, I'll just be upfront. I think it should be fairly obvious from what I'm saying. I'm an admirer of James Bisgrove. I've spent quite a bit of time with him, and I think he is going to be an excellent CEO for Rangers. So I'm just going to put my cards on the table here with that regard. But this is factual when it comes to the Sydney Super Cup. The beep hit the fan quite quickly, and I would say within a few hours, he was on the premier Rangers fan media platform, Heart and Hand, to have a pretty tough interview with David Edgar, the host of the podcast. And he was given a really hard time, and he stood up to it. You might not have answered the questions the way that the fans would have wanted, but he was honest. He said his piece, he explained it, and people might not have agreed with it, but it was out there. And while others were not putting their head above the parapet, James Bisgrove did, and he also did obviously an interview with Rangers TV at that time as well. And listen, club media, it's different. But he was certainly grilled pretty hard, and I think that shows that he's willing to communicate and put his head above the parapet when he needs to. So I think he'll learn from that, and it's important that people are allowed to develop and get used to their surroundings. And listen, there isn't many more difficult places to come up as an outsider than Rangers Football Club. There's a lot of idiosyncrasies and there's a lot of different elements. But we've seen, I think, with James Bisgrove and certainly with Michael Beale, how this club sort of seeps into your DNA. It becomes part of your personality. You saw how keen Michael Beale was to get back. I remember Joshua was on a video call with Michael Beale interviewing him after he went down from the QPR job, and he could barely sort of hide his desire to get back to the club. It also became a bit of a running joke, didn't it? How keen he was to return one day, and so it's proven. There's no doubt these guys are inexperienced, but that's not always the be all and end all. And if you look at Rangers' history, two hugely successful figures, two titanic figures in the club's history, especially Graham Souness, arrived here as a rookie manager. Steven Gerrard arrived as a rookie manager, and I'm using those inverted commas because it was just said so many times. And look, they showed that it's your character at Rangers that counts, not your experience. And if you've got the right character, then you will make a success of things at this club. And I believe that there is a real quality team there now who might just be going into post at the right time.
Yeah, let's hope so. An interesting point here raised by David Brown. He says, it could be good for us having young and hungry people driving our club forward, as let's be honest, we have stagnated of late, onwards and upwards. Here, David. The big news, folks, behind the scenes, executive team changes for Rangers. They've confirmed that Managing Director Stewart Robertson is to depart the club this summer. He will leave on the 31st of July to pursue, explore new opportunities, and James Bisgrove will step up from his current role of Commercial and Marketing Director to become Rangers' new CEO from the 31st of July. So changes are afoot at Ibrox, both on and off the pitch this summer, and you'll keep your eyes peeled on the Rangers Review site, folks, for all the latest news coming out of Ibrox. If you're watching us just now, you can see the little ticker below. Now is the time to subscribe to the website. Just 50 pence for 2 months worth of content. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe. You can also enter the draw for a personalised tour of Ibrox for 4 at the beginning of May. So now is the time to sign up. Okay, folks, that'll do us here. Thanks to everyone for interacting with the show as ever. Big thanks to Jonny as well. Jonny and Joshua will be back tomorrow morning, so hopefully you can join them for that. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday evening. Bye for now.